Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the Mindfully Stitched Podcast. My name is Corley, and I've been knitting for approximately 20 years. I'm not exactly sure, I haven't done the concrete math on that, but when I was in 8th grade, I was at my school's book fair, and rather than grabbing a book at that particular book fair, I picked up one of those Learn How to Knit sets. It came in this brown wicker basket. I can still picture it. It was kind of oval shaped, and inside it had, I think, like wooden knitting needles, just a straight pair. It had 4 to 5 different, like, really bright neon colors: yellow, green, purple, pink, and probably acrylic. And I went to my grandmother's house after school. She lived a block away from me at the time, and she taught me very basic knit stitches. I think she actually only taught me the knit stitch, so all I could do was garter stitch, and that very first thing I made was horrific, as I'm sure you can all relate to. It had holes in there. It kind of went like this and then back in, and it was so wonky. But I was so grateful to have her teach me that. She never knit when I was growing up, so I don't even know how I realized that she knew how. I didn't have knit garments from her or knit blankets or anything, but she taught me anyway, and I seriously have not stopped knitting since. I took a brief detour when I was in college because I got jealous when I was looking at patterns on Ravelry that I would come across patterns that I couldn't make. Why? Because they were crochet patterns and not knitting patterns. And I said, that's not fair. I want to know how to do that too. So when I was in college, I taught myself to crochet, YouTube videos, and a lot of trial and error. My first crochet projects were also just as horrific as my first knitting projects. So, you know, we all go through those growing pains. So I've been knitting and crocheting for quite a bit of time, and I do both pretty consistently. Sometimes I'll lean more towards crochet, sometimes I'll lean more towards knit, but they both have just kind of stuck around with me, and I plan to share all of that with you during these podcasts. So what can you expect? A lot of yarn, a lot of projects, a lot of rambling. So I hope you're on board for all of that. If it sounds interesting, come on board. I'd love to have you. So I'll be talking about the projects that I'm making. Right now, most of the projects on my needles are knit. I do have one crochet garment going at the moment. I am primarily a garment knitter, so you'll see a lot of garments from me. I do throw in an accessory or a home decor item here and there, but my main source of joy from knitting and crocheting are garments. Speaking of which, let's talk about what I'm wearing. This is my Waterscapes pullover by Wilderness Knits. Yeah, you can see it. It was the pattern was gifted to me because I test knit one of her other patterns a couple years ago. I can't remember if it was pre-pandemic or post-pandemic or during the pandemic. I don't remember. But this is the the Waterscapes pullover by Wilderness Knits. I used Barocco Vintage DK in this really pretty light blue robin's egg color. I think I knit it up in the small. I started it and then it was in hibernation for forever, and I had already done the body and part of one of the sleeves, and then I picked it up a couple years later and finished the sleeves. So I just finished this maybe about a month or two ago, and I'm fairly certain I knit the size small, but I can't be 100% certain because I did not take accurate notes. I do like the yarn. It's very soft, maybe a tad bit itchy. I'm not sure. I can tell that it's there, and sometimes I feel a little bit itchy, but it's not like a super scratchy yarn. It actually feels very soft. Very deceptive with the stitch pattern. It is really tiny when you knit it up, and then all the lace blocks out so nicely after blocking. In hindsight, I probably would have knit I like the fit of the body. I'm not crazy about the fit of the sleeves. I wish they were a little bit looser. It is possible that I accidentally knit a size smaller on the sleeves than I did on the body. And I would have made the sleeves longer. They're kind of bracelet length when I'm wearing them. I don't know how well you can see that. They kind of sit right there when I'm wearing it naturally, which is fine. It doesn't look too small. It looks kind of intentionally, like, actually I think it more naturally sits about there. I don't know. My preference would be for longer sleeves and maybe a bit looser sleeves, but I still think it looks really nice, and I get a lot of wear out of it, and I get a lot of compliments on it when I wear it. So overall, I'm very happy with this. I would knit it again. I'm actually debating if I should put that on like my tentative queue, but I have so many other projects that I want to knit. That's my problem. Like, even if I fall in love with a pattern, there are so many other patterns I want to make that I'm kind of a one and done. I have re-knit a couple patterns, but that's usually if I want to gift one to someone. But anyway, this is the Waterscapes pullover. For future episodes of this podcast, I do plan to put in this section the finished objects, but since this is episode number 1, I don't have any objects that were finished between the last podcast and this podcast because there was no last podcast. And I debated showcasing some recently finished objects, but I think what I've decided to do is you'll see any of my finished objects to this point when I wear them in an episode. I'll talk about them, kind of how I did with this one, and then we'll fill in the finished objects section, hopefully starting with the next episode. That would be cool if I could finish up a project between now and then. I'm hoping to do an episode every week, if not every other week. We'll see. I'm getting my feet wet. We're seeing how this goes, and we will do our best. So, since we are not doing finished objects, let's head into works in progress. I have a collection of swatches here that I'm going to go through with you, and then I also have projects on the needles sitting next to me, and I'm going to try to keep this organized, but we'll see what my brain can manage. So the first one I'm going to talk about, whoops, I'm dropping swatches already. The first one I'm going to talk about, I can't really give you that much information. It is a test knit. Nope, it is a test crochet. It is a secret test crochet, and it is for Crochet Highway. I have done a few other tests for her. The majority of them have been secret. I did her tic-tac-toe sweater, which is not a secret. You can find that on my Ravelry page. I am allowed to show you the gauge swatch for this, but that is the only thing I'm allowed to tell you. So, here it is. The lighting in here is pretty terrible because it's 9 o'clock at night, and I have no natural light right now. But this is the gauge swatch. It is reversible, and it will be a sweater. And that's all I'm telling you, and now we're putting this one away. I will share more information when I'm allowed to tell you, but for now, that is all you get. So let's move into our next gauge swatch, which is just this little guy. Plain stockinette swatch. And I do have a ball not attached to the needles. This is Haydenville DK Valley Yarns in the color 8, which is silver. Again, the lighting is horrible. It's a very cool toned, like whitish gray. And I have the project that I started on some knitting needles. If I can figure out which way it goes like this, which I don't know how well you can see that. This is an all over textured sweater. I've done the collar, which is a folded over collar in 2x2 ribbing. It then has this kind of diamond stitch pattern up at the top. We get into these chevrons next, And then in the bottom, there will be these kind of traveling diamonds as well, which are then repeated on the sleeves. My goodness, trying to figure out how to hold this up to the camera so you can see it is not for the faint of heart. So that's what that section will look like. That's just a strip of it down the side of the sleeve. This is another test knit. Oh, focus on me, please. Hi. Okay, I think we're focused. This is a test knit for No One Shill. I actually don't know how to pronounce that, but it's up on the screen. And this is her very first sweater pattern. It's called Weaver's Sweater. And so I am testing that. So that's 2 tests so far. But that is not all. This brings us to our third swatch, which is this lovely swatch. Look at those beautiful cables and that diamond cable with the stitches on the inside, the lace on the inside. It is beautiful, and I wish you could see on camera how beautiful this yarn is. It's getting blown out on the camera, and the lighting is horrible. It is like a pale pink color, and then there's a strand of metallic that runs through it. It is the softest yarn, and it is so beautiful. I just had to run and grab the ball band because I had not come prepared with it. It is Creative Fluffily DK, and this is the colorway 004. It's a cotton polyester acrylic blend, and I am so excited to see that work up. I have not really gotten started on it yet. It's a saddle construction shoulder, and so I got the saddle bits done. So these will just sit right up here, and I knit both of those. So I've got the 2 saddle pieces finished. The next step is to pick up stitches, but I can't find my US 5 knitting needles. My interchangeable set, the tips for the US 5 have gone missing, but US 5 is how I got gauged, so I need to find those or buy some. And I'm leaning towards buy some because my interchangeable set is really old and pretty horrible. I recently just bought... My goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm so disorganized. I bought some ChowGoo needles with the red lace cords. And now that I've worked with that, I don't want to work with my very inexpensive interchangeable needles where the cords are just like the memory in it. They're just always so kinked, and now I want new ones. So I'm leaning towards buying US 5. If I really can't find my US 5 tips, I'll buy some, but we shall see. It would help if I told you what the pattern was. This is the Fouette Pullover by Phaeton Designs, and it's absolutely stunning. I mean, it's just, to pull it up here, I don't know how well you can see that, but it's beautiful. Give her a follow over on Instagram. Her Instagram handle is... As I get into the swing of things and get used to having a podcast, I'm hoping I'll be more organized in each episode. She's just Celine.knits over on Instagram. But it is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm very excited to get into... I was going to say get started. I mean, I've technically already gotten started, but does this even really count as getting started? I'm very excited to see how this works out. And this brings us to our final swatch, which is this gorgeous piece. I love it. This is Sorella yarn. Let me find the ball band because I didn't come prepared with that either. Okay, better than just the ball band, I have a hank that I haven't wound up yet. So this is Sorella yarn on her classic DK base, which is 100% superwash merino wool. And this is sheep and wool from her Rhinebeck collection. And it's beautiful. This was my first hand-dyed yarn purchase. I'm going to say that. I say that more confidently than it sounds. I am 99.9% certain this was my very first hand-dyed yarn purchase, which wasn't that long ago. I only just got into hand-dyed yarns, and my heart loves it, and my wallet does not. Hand-dyed yarns are not cheap. But for me, right now, I'm not doing tonals from hand-dyed yarn. Because I don't need the variegation in my tonal so much, but when I find a pretty variegated or speckled or some sort of patterned yarn, to me that seems worth it, because you can't really get this in a commercially dyed yarn. They have stuff like that available, but from what I have been able to find, it's not as beautiful as these. And I have started this one. Let me get it a bit organized here. This one has made the most progress. This is the Room to Bloom sweater by Kutovakika. And I love her YouTube videos. I love her patterns. I was gifted her Knit This book for Christmas from my fiance. And I'm obsessed. I want to knit through all of this. Like, part of me was like, why don't I just try to knit through this whole book in 2025? And then I thought, that's probably biting off way more than you can chew. There are 21 patterns in here, and while I could probably realistically finish the whole book in 2025, I know there are other patterns I want to knit as well. So I'm not going to set that as a goal for myself, but I will set it as a goal that I want to knit a lot of them. I'm debating if I should challenge myself to go in order or not, or just kind of pick and choose, but I would wear everything in this book. So let's find the Room to Bloom is the very first one. It's also the one on the cover. And it has these beautiful embroidered flowers kind of along one of the shoulders and on the bottom. And when I purchased this yarn from Sorella, I did buy some of the tonals after I just told you that I wasn't going to buy tonals from hand-dyed yarn places. But I bought her tonal mini set. I think of the autumn colors, or maybe it was the Rhinebeck collection. I'm not really sure. But the colors match the colors of this perfectly. So I thought it would be really great to do the embroidered flowers in the tonal yarns. I wonder if you can see the border. Yeah, so you can see the embroidered flowers there. Like, I thought that could be really nice to do those in the tonal yarns to match up with this variegated yarn for the whole sweater. This is also my very first time doing some helical knitting. I've got 2 balls caked up at a time, and I'm just working through helical knitting, going through. If you don't know what that is, Google it. That's what I did. I think Nee Knits mentioned it on one of her podcasts, and I thought, well, now that I have some hand-dyed yarns, I should look into helical knitting. So I've gotten through 1 full skein. I did the majority of the back. She has you cast on here, and then you work your way in kind of this trapezoid shape down the back and do some short rows. And I did all of the short rows with 1 ball of yarn, just because short rows felt like enough to be dealing with than to try to figure out helical knitting at the same time. So all of the short rows are done with 1 ball, and then I started helical knitting after that. So I've gotten through 1 full ball of yarn, and I got this much left of the second one that I did, and then I just caked this one up and started with that. So that is my Room to Bloom sweater. Okay, so that brought us to the end of my swatches, and if you counted, you are correct. I do have 4 sweater patterns going at the moment, and 3 of them are test knits. So we've got our first deadline is January 26th, and that's for the secret test for Crochet Highway, and then my Weaver sweater is due February 1st, and the Fouette sweater is due sometime after that, sometime mid-February maybe. I've mapped them all out so that I can stay on track. So far, I'm on track with all of them. I may have bitten off a little bit more than I can chew, but the Room to Bloom sweater can be on pause till after the test knits get finished. So I just like to have a little bit of stockinette in the round to do when I have some downtime where I can't really focus on my knitting, but still want to be knitting. And while that did bring us to the end of the swatches, it does not bring us to the end of works in progress. Although I may actually consider this future cast-ons. So let's go ahead and start the future cast-ons section. So first up in my future cast-ons section is going to be my very first pair of socks ever. Yes, I have been knitting for 20 years, give or take, and I have never knit a pair of socks. And as I am making that statement, I am remembering that I did knit 1 pair of slipper socks that were kind of sock construction. They were like worsted weight. I think I did like loops and threads, acrylic, or maybe impeccable yarns or something like that. So maybe it's not technically correct that these are my first pair, but these are my first pair of like true socks. And I'm not following a pattern. Okay, that is incredibly misleading. Let me show you what I'm using. I am using this book that I gifted myself, Custom Socks, Knit to Fit Your Feet. Yeah, I don't really have any reason why I bought this instead of trying to follow a pattern other than Nee Knits mentioned it on her podcast, and I decided, yep, I need that. And so you can see I've got some Post-its sticking out. I've gone through, I've measured my foot, I've made some, I wrote stuff down. I've got Post-its, and the concept of this is she teaches you how to measure a million different aspects of your foot so that you can then create a sock that perfectly fits your foot. And while I don't think I have non-average feet, which she kind of talks about in here, I do have sort of non-typical feet. My feet are very narrow and long, so I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a very standard size. But I did all of the math, and I am ready to go. And I have the most beautiful yarn ever, which is now wrapped up in my laptop charger cord. And I cannot quite figure out how this goes. Like that. Okay. This is not going to show up on camera. It barely shows up in photos. But it is the most beautiful pastel blues and maybe like a cream and pinks and purples, and it's just gorgeous. And this is from the Fiber Fox. This is my first time getting anything from the Fiber Fox, and this was the Merry Kitschmas luxury socks, 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. This was the Christmas Eve cast on based on vintage Christmas cards. And it came with this full skein of sock yarn, and then it came with these 2 smaller skeins. And I just have to pick which one I'm going to do for the contrast, which will be the cuff, the heel, and the toe. I think I'm leaning towards doing the teal color. It's crazy to me how when you hold up a contrast color, it changes what the yarn looks like. And again, I've apologized for the lighting. a ton. I actually don't even know that I've apologized for it. I've just mentioned it. But the lighting in here is horrible, so I can't quite show you. But yeah, I started to knit up, not a swatch, because it's way too small to be considered a swatch. I just wanted to see how the colors played out, and I wanted to see what the fabric was going to be like. It's not even going to focus on this. Plus, you can't really tell the colors anyway. So it's not technically a gauge swatch. I mean, I have a feel for how many stitches I have per inch from this, but really I just wanted to see what the colors were going to look like. And I'm just going to knit a vanilla pair of socks, just stockinette, with a ribbed cuff, and see how it goes. I'm very, very excited for that. So those will be my first pair of socks that I plan to knit. So that is sort of a work in progress because I've technically cast on something, but I haven't really cast on the socks yet. So it's a future cast on. And this brings us to our next future cast on, which is, drum roll, another test knit. I think I bit off a little bit too much. I will be able to get them all done, but I think I need to cool it on the test knits. I have a tendency to apply for them because you never know if you are going to get chosen for a test. And when I see a pretty pattern, I have a hard time resisting. And I happened to get chosen for quite a few of them. I think there was one that I didn't get chosen for, and I applied for all of these within the same week, I'm pretty sure. Actually, the one that I'm about to talk about was an impulse application while I was at my parents' house for Christmas. But that is the Frosty beanie. The Frosty beanie is a cabled beanie knit holding one strand of fingering weight and one strand of mohair, or you can just hold a single strand of DK weight yarn. And I have not decided what I will be making this out of yet. I have some options. I've got Sadness Garn Sunday in the color 5882. It's this very dark navy color, and I would hold it with Drops Kid Silk Mohair in a blue color. I would consider them both navy, but this is a bit of a lighter navy than the Sadness Garn, but I think together would make a really pretty fabric. I'm not sure how well the cable texture would show up in this dark of a yarn, but would be worth trying out. Another option I have is another Sadness Garn Sunday in this olive green color, and I would hold it with Drops Kid Silk Mohair in different green. Wow, next time I film a podcast, I will do it during the daytime when there's much better lighting. So the navy, the green, or I could do one strand of DK weight in the Barocco Vintage DK that I made this pullover out of. While I like the color of this more for the cables, I have two hanks of this, and I don't really know that a beanie is the project for this yarn. I may hold off and do something bigger, although I could knit more than one. I also need to check the yardage. So that's another option. So I haven't decided on the yarn. If you have an idea of what I should use, let me know. I could use the Sadness Garn and the Kid Silk in the navy, or in the olive green color, or I wish I had three hands. No, I don't. Or I could do the Barocco Vintage DK. Let me know what you think in the comments below. The other thing that I'm thinking about doing throughout this year, which will make my November, December life a lot easier, is to knit gift knits throughout the year. So I could just make a ton of them. No, I don't want to do that, but I could make more than one of them and keep one for myself and use one as a gift knit. I think a couple of the accessories that are in this book I want to make as gift knits as well. So that's an idea, but let me know what you think I should do for the Frosty beanie. You can check it out on her Instagram. That is what the beanie looks like. It's beautiful, and there's her Instagram handle, if it'll focus. Yep, there you go. Look, you can tell it's 9:45. That's why it's dark in here. Okay, now we have come to our very last section, miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is exactly what it sounds like. Whatever didn't fit in any of the previous categories goes in here. And the first thing I want to show you is this book that I just got today as a Christmas gift from my best friend, the Harry Potter Knitting Magic, the official Harry Potter knitting pattern book. And oh my goodness, is this thing cool. I don't have any plans to cast on any of these right away because you saw how many other works in progress I currently have. But a few of the standout highlights for me. I will probably never make this, but if you know Harry Potter, you know this sweater. It would be so funny to have one, but I don't know that I would ever wear it. I do work at a preschool, so I could wear it to work. I'm a speech therapist at a preschool. I work with kids birth to age 5. And so my work attire is anything that you can sit on the ground and play with children in. So I could wear something like that to work, but I don't know. I just don't know that I actually would. A sweater that I would be much more likely to wear is one of the Hogwarts House cardigans. I think that's super cute, so I would make myself one. I am a Ravenclaw, for anybody who's curious. So I could make myself a Ravenclaw cardigan. And then the last one that's really intriguing me, if I can find it, is a little caplet shawl based off of Fleur Delacour and her uniform. Here it is. This beautiful caplet shawl. But I don't know that I would wear that either. Although it could be really nice to pair with a dress if I'm going somewhere instead of wearing a cardigan, to just wear something like that to cover my shoulders. So you know what? That might even be the first thing that I do. So who knows? But these patterns are going to have to take a back seat because of all of the other works in progress I have and future cast-on plans at the moment. So there's that. But with all of that being said, let me know all of your thoughts. What do you think about my projects? What do you think about this podcast? What else do you want to hear about in the podcast? Are there specific things that I forgot to talk about that you're like, hey, you didn't tell us XYZ? Throw it all in the comments. Give me some constructive criticism, some feedback. I would be happy to make adjustments or add things or whatever to make this more enjoyable for you as the viewer. Also, I would love to know what's on your needles. What are you making? What are your 2025 knitting plans? I haven't set any concrete goals other than I want to knit my first pair of socks and I want to make a bunch of things, but you know, I don't have any concrete goals, but maybe you do and you want to share. So yeah, let me know a little bit about you and what you're making. And with all of that being said, that brings us to the very end of the very first episode of the Mindfully Stitched Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am very excited to start this journey with you all, and I will catch you all next time. Happy knitting! Bye!